Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Social Housing Roundtable. It's lovely seeing some people who joined us for the first time last week coming back, which is great. It's lovely seeing some familiar faces who've been here for the last kind of 3 years as well. So a nice group today, and it's great to have you all with us. To those who don't know me, my name's Matthew Baird. I've been running and co-hosting the Social Housing Roundtable now for 3 years. This was initially a group just to come together and talk about some of the key issues that were going on during COVID, and now has grown into this amazing group where we've had 108 social housing roundtables now. The last 50 something, all the recordings are up on YouTube, Spotify and Amazon, but it's just grown to this fantastic network, this amazing group of real kind of thoughts and of sharing kind of ideas and best practice, and actually trying to get to the crux of what we can start immediately and what we can do to make change. So it's great to see so many people on board with the journey. Day to day, I'm a recruiter. I've been recruiting in social housing for 11 years, and the reason these are free is because of that. Yeah, I wanted to, when I set up on my own, do something which changed that narrative a bit and stop being just, well, you know, if you pay me, great, I can go and, I don't know, go and get a nice food or whatever it will be. Put money towards a house at some point my fiance will probably say a wedding. But instead, you know, really showcase something else that money can go towards. And, you know, my favor and my promise to you all always will be that if you can come to me and speak to me about your recruitment, I can keep this free. And that will be my promise to you. If as a favor, if you're a hiring manager or involved with recruitment in any way for your business, just come and have a conversation. So moving on to today, a massive thank you to Kevin and the team at Investors in Excellence. And I'm going to introduce Kevin in just a moment, for stepping in last minute, because literally this time yesterday, there wasn't a roundtable today. So amazing that you've stepped in last minute and been able to put this together. And to those who don't know Investors in Excellence, I'm a massive advocate for what they do, but B, I've had them on the table before. So if you've missed some of the other sessions, do go back. So we're going to talk about some other things today, but those sessions are always fascinating. So I'm going to pass across to Kevin to introduce himself and his presentation for today. He will share his screen shortly. We did talk before. If you want to dive in at any point, please do raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas. Alternatively, if you just wish to use the chat function because you don't want to come in, that's also absolutely great. So without further ado, Kevin, I'll pass across to you to do your introductions and start sharing your screen when you're ready.
Well, hopefully you can see it, because I think it's already shared, isn't it, Matt?
It's not up at the moment. I think it got stopped when we let everybody into the room. So back over to you again.
We'll go back into it. It tends to happen sometimes with Zoom, doesn't it? So perhaps if we can just unshare and reshare with you. Share screen. We'll do it again. If you just confirm that you can see our screen in a second.
That is coming up now. One more bit, and we're in. Brilliant, Kevin.
We're in. And you've got some more joining too. Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you for the welcome, and thanks to the people with us around the table today. Yes, Matt's mentioned that it was a last-minute fastball, so we're really pleased to be with you, and we treat this as a privilege. My name is Kevin Hart. I'm the Group MD and Programme Director of the Investors in Excellence Group, as Matt's mentioned. And I'm not a salesperson, so the good news is that there are no strings attached to today. It's a round table, and being in a position of saying thank you, I feel it's a pleasure and a privilege to be with you, but also to share many of the things around excellence in housing. And it'd be great to listen as well as contribute, because it is a round table, so we're equal voice, equal to hear, and we'll learn from each other too, because we're equal distance. As we go through today, it's a chance to share with you some of the great things that are happening in excellence in housing. And I work extensively around that globally. What we're trying to do today is to share with you, and it's not just a privilege, but it's an advantage to actually be in the country occasionally, and to be part of your roundtable initiative. And I've been following your debate and consultation with the housing bodies around the country, and particularly this morning with some of the messages and the debate that's been on LinkedIn. Thank you for that. Investors in Excellence, very quickly, a bit of history and a biography of the company. Started over 28 years ago. It was then started in the Midlands and a not-for-profit organisation. It did two things. It moved out of the region and it made a profit, so it became a company. And last year, we amalgamated into a group, and there are 4 arms to Investors in Excellence. Investors in Excellence Limited, Investors in Excellence International Limited, Investors in Excellence Training Limited, and Investors in Excellence Digital Limited. So coming in a group makes it a lot easier and fewer words too. So we like to be economical as well as efficient. Just a few slides to share with you, showing the tools and techniques of excellence in housing. As we share in our debate and our dialogue, I'm here to learn with you and from you. And I mentioned to Matt before we came online the importance of what matters most in housing today and going forward, and the challenges and solutions we have to face together. I will introduce a case study today from the people we work with in housing, and I know that we have some of our housing partners joining the round table. So if they are with us, I hope that you can make them welcome, and also they actually say hello too. So first, to the round table, greetings from Investors in Excellence Group. Apart from 2 alarms every morning, I get out of bed at 6 a.m. because excellence does get me out of bed, honestly, because I always want to achieve something new every day. Eleanor Roosevelt said, do something scary every day. Well, I look in the mirror. And perhaps with the name like Kevin Hart, you would be expecting somebody who looks very different to me. But I like to think that with my namesake, I got the name before he did. He's a lot more handsome and certainly a lot more funny than me. But we join with him in many things, apart from the fact I actually use his star on the footpath in Miami in some of my presentations too. But excellence is this definition. When I joined the company 7.5 years ago, my first question was, why haven't we got a definition of excellence? We now have one very clearly. We like to be clear and concise, as short as possible in everything. And to debate with you and those we work with in housing globally, and particularly predominantly in the UK, what excellence in housing is. So if you'd like to have something as a gizzit and a freebie, we are offering today, again, no strings attached, free of charge, as Matt has said. It's an open, free forum, a really good guide to excellence in housing, and it will give you further tools and techniques that produce the results. This is so up to date. This was only launched last week, and we've updated to bring it into the context of housing. It's a guide to unlocking business potential and improving performance. And I've based it today, this short presentation, on this particular framework. Around the world at the moment, many people are engaging with us because they want to look at 2 important things, not just in business generally, but particularly in key sectors. Housing is a key one. I've been involved in it for many years in many different companies and businesses. But to recognise that your dialogue to ask the big questions of government, who have said to us, we need in the region of 300,000 new homes every year, but specialist housing, particularly social housing, which is economical, efficient, and easy to keep, are important. I'm also involved with the Institute of Productivity, and this is really scratching our heads all the time. I commend you with your debate and your dialogue at the moment, looking for the solutions. Please keep it up, and if in any way we can learn from each other further in our talk, we'll join you in that. But the Institute of Productivity is basing a lot of its work around trying to help government, and this was last week. They met in the House of Commons to look at the 5 key strategic objectives to solving the productivity puzzle. There is one in all of our sectors, but generally in the UK, part of my introduction is to take the ONS figures and to say that in the league of the G7 for productivity, guess where the UK is? Number 6. Only Japan is actually at the foot of the table below us. And our productivity is around about 59% as a country, which means on average, 41% of our potential is wasted. What does that mean in real terms? Well, we have recently been able to finish some research, and all of us generally in work in the UK, and you can disagree with me or agree with me, but have to think about it, waste 1.2 hours per day on unnecessary activities. Many people say that's getting a deluge of emails and most of the time spent deleting them just for the important few. What does it mean in real terms? Well, if we can save 1.2 hours of work per day, that relates immediately to a 3% rise in UK productivity. That's not bad. In real terms, bottom line, It's £300 billion, which is equivalent to 2 NHSs. Wow. So the first part is to define business capacities, and I'll leave this slide for us to look at and share with you. I'll put a few inputs as captions in to say what each slide is about, and then let's open it to dialogue and debate. And I said, learn from each other. Business capacities. What we have found working with the housing sector is it's always good to ask the question, what have we done? Where have we come from? And what are we actually good at? So here is our business capacity slide, and it asks different levels, individual, team, all the way through to the world, because we have to make a difference in society. It's to look at what we do well, what we could do better, and what we should do differently. Anything we want to add around the table today, and thanks for joining us. If we want to share this, our business capacities, it tells us what capacity we have in us, in our business, perhaps in our teams, departments, projects. What is it that we actually do well, could do better, and should do differently?
Were you looking for people to dive in there, Kevin? I was.
I'll pause and I'll just leave you to join in, and then when we come to that moment when there's a pause, a silence, we'll move to the next slide, and I'll just take us through this guide even further.
Yeah, please do. I think it'll be. It's definitely. I think that piece around, as you put there, what is that? What is our business capacities is absolutely key.
I also welcome your debate because you're moving into business competencies, which we'll expand in a second.
I think jump on for now, but I think it'll be something for people to think about while we're moving through the presentation.
So we've got our capacity sorted, and we can share this with all our people. It's really good. We do this all the time. We also use an online app and a tool to use a 6-week window performance appraisal. We don't wait for a 6-month and annual appraisal. We are continuously doing that to actually get the best from each other. As we move through from the capacities, the next segment of that cake is to ask some key questions, clarify what really matters most. What matters most to us as a business at the corporate governance level. And we know in housing, our relationship with our regulator is one which changes, a bit of a roller coaster ride from time to time. But at the highest level, and working with our case study, and I will show you how they have developed over the last 7 years, we have developed this approach now that what matters most, ask the key strategic questions at a board level or maybe a senior leadership level to say, here we are corporately together. We ask them the key questions, what we're here to do, what's our vision, where we want to be, success, and our mission, how we're going to get there, but more importantly, what our core values are and how expansive, entrepreneurial, and how excited we are about making a difference in our particular area of work. It might be a niche, it might be vulnerable adults, it could be social housing, it could be more general housing, but it's important to think about what it is that we do that sets us apart that nobody else does anywhere else. That's the corporate level, and the key in housing is for somebody to take responsibility at that level to say oversight of strategy. The CEO or the senior leaders might set the intent, which is what we intend to do, and then the board are responsible at looking at the overall strategy to say, well, we'll help you with looking at how well we're doing and with the development, advancement, and of course the results, because we want to be able to see, we start with the intent, we see it through strategy objectives all the way through to outcomes. And working with our case studies, we're seeing now more and more that at that highest level, responsibility, oversight, ownership are important things. But let's engage our people too in what matters most. And that's really important, to engage and excite, because we're asking questions now about telling our stories. So important. What does make the difference where we work? How can we unlock our potential, improve our performance? And how can we save that 1.2 hours per day of unnecessary activities? So if we look at it, here are some key questions which you've got available now in this presentation. And if you'd like to be able to sort of use that, the guide that goes with it, that's available too. There's a lot more there. So what matters most? Key question If you want to jump in any time with those answers or responses, please do. And if not, we can just move forward a segment further.
I think from previous discussions on the roundtables, like the key thing is whether or not businesses are truly putting their customers first. I think seems to be one of the big things coming up at the moment, alongside culture, culture of whether or not we're truly putting staff and tenants at the core of what we're doing, or whether we're mainly in line for profit. Because evidently there's been a lot of changes, I guess, in housing over the last few years. I'm looking at those, and there's some excellent conversations within there that need to be had. Those near, mid, long-term challenges. That's, I imagine, how long would a course like this, do you tend to spend like a day on these questions alone, Kevin? How long do the business tend to focus on when running this kind of project?
We tend to build it into our DNA every day. It's a part of our, conversation. And what we want to be able to do is encourage ourselves just at the beginning of any particular group or meeting to be able to ask anything that comes up. And yes, to start with, we could do this as an away day with businesses. And then the debate is so informative. I mean, insightful. I worked with these key questions for years, and it helps us to pinpoint our priorities.
Fantastic.
Sorry, sorry, it's
Please
Lark
do.
from West Grattan House and Co-op here. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, Matt, I've just sort of butted in there, but it just struck me.
Please do.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Loud and clear.
Brilliant. I think what just really strikes me more than anything else is when you say what matters most, then obviously Matt voicing his concern that perhaps we're not putting our tenants first. So for me, when we come to work every day, what it should be in our minds is about making that difference. And that difference will be different to everybody that we deal with, because you're dealing with people's lives and you're dealing with people's homes, and there is nothing more personal than somebody's home. So in terms of what matters most, that is what matters most, and that's what should matter most, because that actually is what we are here to do. So we are a landlord, we do rent out properties, and yes, they should be fit for human habitation and all the rest of it. But actually it encompasses so much more than that. And I think at the end of the day that we're here to make a difference. And I think if you can try and instill that in staff, that if they can make a difference to somebody's life that day, not only will they benefit from it, but actually in terms of staff intrinsically, that brings something to the job that I think is missing in a lot of social landlords today that I see around in the sector. So that would be just my thought on that.
No, I completely agree with you, unfortunately, and it's something that has come up many times on the roundtable before, and backed up by, obviously, Lara's just put there in the chat, are the residents happy living in our properties and our communities? This is what should matter most. And it's brilliant to hear that, like, obviously that's something that you're focusing on within the business in Scotland. And I know we're going to dive back to you to kind of hear a bit more about the case study and your journey with Investors in Excellence. But Kevin, I'll pass over to you to go on to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to hear that tale coming from Edinburgh in Scotland, because we've got 41 participants, 7 are chatting away. Keep that going. But that key point is everything, isn't it? What is it that we do in our business organization that we want to do better and that nobody else can do it as well? That's what matters most. House, home, happiness, health, well-being. Yeah. So let's move on, because capacity next, because we've got our capacity sorted. We've got now our capabilities. And this is a very general sort of slide, because it says every business organization has their own capabilities. It's what we just mentioned. What is it we could do? What do we do well? What could we do better? What should we do differently? And this is a generic approach, but we all have our own capabilities. Capacity, what we can do. Here we have our capabilities. How are we going to do it? And so here's an example from one business who wanted to develop this, and they've got 8 areas, expanding to 9 recently, into key areas of their capabilities. And to it, they want to expand to their core role and personal competencies. So we've developed for many people, organizations and businesses globally, a set of competencies. There are 9 examples here. We expand that to many more for some. But you just mentioned earlier on about the contribution in the chat of how it's important to take this into developing our people for the benefit of our clients, our tenants. And that's important to say that here, this develops very nicely into a learning module. And all our work is small, modularized. We call them mods. And the first example is, if we want to inspire a shared purpose, to engage and excite our people is to show we have something, this is what it is, why it's important, what it isn't, and we have a nice star scheme. And this is not about making fries for a fast food restaurant and wearing a badge, but this is development and, of course, improvement always. So this is a great way of approaching improving our business capabilities from the stance of understanding our capacities first. So really good in housing to recognize what it is that drives us forward. And we all have our own ecosystems. This is really engaging IIE at the moment around the world. And an ecosystem is something which is so brand new, but it's the environment in which we live and work. And everything is different, whether we're working from Scotland down to Cornwall or anywhere in the world. We have individual, bespoke, customized ecosystems. I'll give you an example of what it means. That means take your business, company, organization, that's the trademark. That's the brand. That's what we've just said about what do we do that's so important that nobody else does it quite like us or as well. Put your vision in, make it nice and clear so everybody understands. This is in the future what we intend to do. This is what success for us in our housing organization business looks like. And mission, how we're going to get there. So the ecosystem then expands into core values. And then in IIE, we have 5. We call it RISER. Respect, integrity, service excellence, and relevance. And the last one is so important. The more excellent, the more relevant. The more relevant, the less wasteful. The more relevant, the more productive. And add to it your strategic priorities, together with the people responsible in leadership, with our people in our board, if we have one, or boards. And if you are a group, as our case study will share with me, we can actually see the importance of setting the priorities, line of sight directions of travel. And in housing, and excellence in housing, you will see in our free guide that we talk about vectors. And vectors have direction and force. And so it says, in terms of business planning, where we want to get to, how we're going to get there, and by when, and all the other things that we want to put into smarter objective setting. That's smart with excellence and relevance added in. And I'm going to just challenge you in a moment, because the most successful companies in excellence have managed to get their business aim. This is what we aim to be and do in 5 words or less. So for IIE, it's unlock potential and improve performance. Yeah, we've done it. And get your purpose into 10 words or less. For us, it was defined and is defined as organizational development, continuous improvement, sustainable growth, and more excellent outcomes. It makes it simple. If we can put it across in these terms, everybody can understand. So could we in some way do that for our own businesses? It makes it nice, clear and concise. And if it's clear and concise, we can communicate it effectively. So that's really what an ecosystem does. I looked at one with an area I'm working at the moment in Dubai. That's health. It was so complex, I couldn't understand it. And when I spoke with the health providers, they couldn't understand their own either. So it needs to be simple. Expand your ecosystem. And here's our case study. And I'm grateful that they allow me to share with you their core values in social and vulnerable housing. And these are their 5 strategic priorities. I've worked with them now for 7.5 years. We've expanded into a group from the constituent businesses. And we've recently established a new business called Instead, which is looking to supply social housing to particular groups, including former military service personnel, veterans, and that's another key area, and looking at their priorities. So when I first joined and worked with this particular company, they had 55 employees and they now have 88. They have moved from 3 regions to 6. They have just returned 11% profit, and this year, 24-25, they expect their first £100 million budget. And excellence is delivering. How do we know it? Voids are down, and our tenant and people satisfaction scores are improving. So it's not bad to say the ecosystem does work, and Overall, I'll show you some bands of performance. They've gone from being assessed by Investors in Excellence as a good organization, and they're now high performing, and they have managed in the last 3 years to improve their overall performance by 14.4%. So set against their amalgamation creation of a group, and now the last 3 years post-pandemic, the changes in the housing sector and their expansion to get a performance improvement of those figures is outstanding. So I have already congratulated them, and I thank them for their chance to share this today.
Really interesting, because based on some of the points you made there, and the particularly that collaboration piece, in the chat, there's a point from Michelle saying that housing and health are intrinsically linked. Excuse me.
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see how the values and innovations in both sectors could be blended more closely together. And this was backed up by Kim, who mentioned that as a charity, it was clear that homelessness, housing, and health are linked. Individuals are often gate-kept at the point of needing a GP. They are often asked for an address or told, if you don't have an address, you're not able to use the service. After 3 years of planning and banging on doors to get what we have now at our day service, we have an on-site 5 days a week prescribing nurse and a care coordinator. The outcomes for our service users cannot be underestimated, and the complex needs of the cohort are now being met. And Claude just mentioned there, 4 million homes program empowering residents by giving them training on their rights. There's a lot in that collaboration piece, I imagine, when you're working in housing, Kevin, that's absolutely key, because individual businesses sometimes get siloed in housing but cannot do it alone.
No, and that ecosystem, Michelle, Kim, and Claude, and Matt, you mentioned, tell us that it's looking at competencies because the synergies are so strong. We've recently done this, and you mentioned one key area, homelessness. And what we're seeing is, apart from happiness, health, and well-being, health comes into it, but also you've got community development, you've got improving community spirit. You've also got the opportunity to look at some housing providers who are struggling with cuckooing. So we've got to look at that. And it's important to think that multi-tenancy and handing things on and using the properties for the wrong intent. But the competencies come through strongly then. So social development, career development, perhaps pastimes, hobbies included. So learning development is strong, particularly when people want to re-career. And we've also seen security and safety improvements, because of course these are all interrelated. And you're right, I work extensively with policing around the world, and those 7 pillars of policing apply just as equally to housing as well when you look at protection, prevention, etc. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do please move on.
Yeah, thank you. So the 5th segment is about, now you've got ecosystem, this is operating environment, all sorted. Let's look at the framework. And here is what we call the fundamentals. So you've seen that already. I've just minimized it to expand it. And you've got it all sorted. Our vision, mission, nicely clear and concise. Everybody understands it. Core value set, where everybody coming into our business, we can blend our personal core value sets with the corporate one. Sometimes we can't, but we look at this as we mentioned earlier. We heard about from Scotland the importance of recruitment, where we want to identify how we can blend in our core values as we recruit, select, and onboard people. So to make sure that synergy is absolutely smoothless. Then we've got the opportunity from the fundamentals, we call this bit in the framework, and this is taking up 100% of my time at the moment when it comes to developing businesses globally. Ecosystem framework. Fundamentals there, that's what you see. Add to it your pillars. Now, these pillars are what you've seen as your priorities, objectives, and it sets the way we're going forward. It transforms us into a more excellent organization, delivering more excellent outcomes. So you've got the pillars, and those could be many things, but these things, it's what our business is actually going to hang on. And you've seen that with our case study. We want to show, and I'll expand it in a second, what their pillars are. Add to it your drivers, the motivators, the influencers. It's what gets all our people out of bed every day, what's actually driving them forward. And it's interesting, we look at the drivers and influencers, what they might be. And finally, in your performance framework, principles. And those things, indicators to measure your performance, your maturity, sustainability. Chat's going on, Matt. It looks like there's 17 different chat lines taking place. So 18, let's hear what we've got to say. Thank you.
Yeah, so a point there from Lark has just said that culture is central to everything in your organisation, yet it is the most challenging. As social housing providers' performance is heavily weighted on quantitative key performance indicators. This helps identify issues with business processes which might need course correction. However, I think there needs to be more of a focus on qualitative measures. It shouldn't simply be about measuring tenant satisfaction through the standard surveys, because most statistics, while useful, do not give the full picture or context.
Absolutely true. And we'll show that in a second as we finish, with a few more slides, but not many to go now. So well done. Thank you. Anything else, Matt?
No, someone has a dodgy connection on a train, so that was kind of that was the extent of those ones getting.
They're going through a tunnel. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just to expand our framework even further in this segment called Excellence Framework, totally agree. We're looking at all areas of assessing how well we're achieving our vision. The quantitative, the how much, and the qualitative, how well. So we're bringing in now the case study who are showing you that their core values, their culture, because values create your culture. Culture is where we live and work, and all work is a process. So we want to bring all this together. And here are their 5 business priorities: finance, property development, property management, operations, and business services. They've restructured their group across all the different parts to these 5 key business areas. And we've got teams working in each of those. I meet them and talk with them regularly. And it's interesting that when we look at this, it comes and blends together really, really well. This has been their development of their framework so far. And you can see there, SO meaning strategic objectives. We're going to have to work more on this, which we're doing now. They've just had their assessment. And what we've identified is expanding each of their key business areas more objectively. And they have identified in the past that every objective, those are their core values. So strategic objective 1 is maintenance, and 2 core values they want to fulfill are excellence and a trust. So you can see there that that's important. They've now admitted they want to expand even further and grow, and it's going to be by all 5 core values being ultimately fulfilled through each of their strategic objectives rather than just 1 or 2. SO 3.1 is organizational development there, and 2, inclusive and collaborative, but they want to expand that even more. So I've commended them. They've recognized that this opportunity and framework gives them a chance to look at how they've got to where they are, and just as importantly, what they've done to expand and improve, and of course, to perform. So there's a chance to look forward. This is their work for the next 12 to 24 months with us. And it really does work, because I've just mentioned some of the signs that they've gone from 3 to 6 regions and improved their performance. Move on then. I'll show you very quickly outside the box of housing. This is a company in Saudi Arabia I've worked with for 4 months. This is their framework in development. And you can see that they've just flip-flopped their system here to their framework. It's customized, because we can do that. That's what's great with excellence. It's really flexible, and no one size ever fits all. So what we've got here, they've actually taken their priorities and put them, their business priorities, on the outside of their framework. And in the inner, they've got their key areas of business. So you can see there are 8. There's 10 imperatives. Sorry, 8 imperatives, 8 things they want to do excellently. And these are the business units. I've taken as an example, they are involved also in housing, in their city and region, and they want to attract not just residents, but tourists. Very much an ecosystem in Saudi. And they've got their principles. These are the things that they want everybody in the business to work towards. They're moving to a new HQ in Riyadh, and they've got an expansive approach. So excellence will embrace that with them. And you can see there that they want to expand it even further. It might seem quite complex, but they've got 11 areas just for tourism they want to excel in, because they've got one area just looking at this. So you can imagine that in that particular culture, finance maybe not as much a pressing imperative as it is in the UK, but it's just as important, person for person, real for real, to make a huge difference. So there's an example globally to show how we can expand this in particular key areas. And they've got there other parts in core functions that they want to work on, and they've expanded this even further with us. But their biggest change is, and I will point out there, strategic leadership. It's really making a huge difference. Rather than top down or bottom up, it's center out. And that expands, looking at everything together. I put together the segments there, top left, to show you what does excellence deliver: business intelligence, maturity, sustainability, advantage, and at the end of it, growth. And that can be an internal thing, quantitatively, qualitatively. It can also be growth in terms of a rising scale of improvement in any way, performance. It can be a bottom line improvement. It can be expanding our property portfolio. There are many ways in which we can look at that growth. And I mentioned earlier the importance of different dimensions to what we do. So we build a picture. In the center there, you have an approach that we use every day in all our work with all our partners. And collaboratively, we learn from each other. Strategy, objectives, operations, outcomes. So there are 5 dimensions of excellence. That's 1. The standard that we operate to, leading, resourcing, delivering, and achieving, gives us level 2. Nick Deming produced this when he said plan, do, study, act, or review, act, or maybe check, act. We prefer study because it embraces R&D, which is strong in excellence. And there you've got the 10 levels, bands of performance with the scores that go with it. And I mentioned the case study, who just 7.5 years ago were at the good, and now they've just raised their game up into the high performing. It's taking a lot of effort and a lot of collaboration, but we have included every person in this. And it's always great to meet every person across this business, because we just want to hear their stories and get to unpacking, the insight as well as the information. So that's just to show you the 5 levels: the individual, personal, we engage them all, the team, department, project, into the whole organization. And the difference we said, we heard earlier on about the importance of making a difference in the world, society. And I'll leave you the last slide, because the roadmap to success is what we've just been working on together, talking about, thinking about, chatting about. We've got our values sorted, our culture. We are setting what matters most as our ultimate vision, fulfilling our core values as best we can, all of them. We've identified the challenges, and in challenges, recognize what are the anchors, elephants, and the monkeys in our business. The anchors, there's usually 1 or 2 in every business. They're holding us back, holding us down, keeping the boat steady. Also, what about the elephants in the room? Maybe taking up too much space. And the monkeys we've all got on our backs. And what are the solutions that we want to adopt or maybe discover to deal with the challenges? That's going to be then the strategic part, leading to the outcomes. And we've got on that journey the 5 big strategic steps, the most productive things that we'll be able to do in the next 1 to 2 years, 5 to 10, whatever it might be, to improve our performance. And we can define those 5 big strategic steps by doing what we've just done. And from the case study, by having a regular, full and formal assessment. And they've done this by, last of all, showing their journey. And there's their plaque to be presented. So it really is up-to-date breaking news. But they start with a regular garden review. They use an online assessment tool with us. They want to discover by evidence all across the board, whatever it might be. A full and formal assessment, that was in January and February of this year, reporting the scores, which we've just done. And we recognize their very big 5 strategic objectives, strengths and AFIs. And there they are. And they've just developed their roadmap to success. So that's their flowchart. That's their work with us for the next 2 years at least. So thank you for what we've been able to share with you today. Hope it hasn't been too much in such a short presentation. It's great to be able to working with several who've joined us in the roundtable. I hope we continue our debate. And we've got a bit of time now to share any feedback, any questions, any comments, whether we agree or disagree. The chat's going. It's still on 18. And thank you to all who've participated. It has been a pleasure and a privilege. And in housing, I hope we go from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And it's been really, really interesting to look at, I think, some of the points that you've certainly raised in your presentation today, and I really value the fact that you've done so. Just bringing the table back in and everybody now. So if you would like to jump in, obviously use the chat function, or there's a reactions tab at the bottom of the screen. Please raise hand and I will bring you in straight away, or physically raise your hand if you turn on your video, and I can bring you in. I'm keeping an eye on the screen as a whole. Kevin, just to start this, and then I'll bring in Lark. For yourself, what's one of the barriers for people maybe stopping getting onto this journey? Because it's clear that with continual time and effort, you know, that rise to excellence can happen. However, it's also obviously not a small piece of work. So where's the resistance that you're finding to begin with from the housing world in particular to trying to change? Because it's clear we're in a society and a sector that is needing change. And I'm using that with a very broad brush, but housing has to improve.
Yeah, absolutely honest and open with you and everybody. Housing is bucking the trend in 2024. What we're seeing, though, is a need for, as we've said, more housing, but more effective, efficient, economical, and happier housing to give the house to home a dimension. But more importantly, and if you follow the news today, there's the development of the MOD, who are looking to change in their housing provision. It's picking up the signs, not just of what's needed now, but what's needed tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and so on. And the biggest challenge, the biggest elephant for all businesses wanting to embrace excellence, head, heart, hand. It's the mindset change that matters. It's the combining and collaborating and sharing together better. And it's about getting our hands dirty to actually be willing to actually make a difference. When we change the head, heart, and hand approach, excellence really just becomes second nature to us. It becomes part of our everyday vernacular. And we start to ask the key questions of all of our people, those we work with. What is it that we're not doing better apart, and what we're doing better together? And when we do collaborate more in our collaboratories, it really does make a difference. And boy, are we seeing some improvements. It's great to be able to work globally and to think with small, large, complex, not so complex organizations, regardless of size, location, complexity. The smaller organization I work with, 2 people.
It all makes a difference. Lark, I'm going to bring you in. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So service delivery is absolutely key, and we should all be outcome based. And by far, staff are our biggest assets in this sector. But my question would really be, I think Kevin had said about mindset and also about excellence being part of your daily vernacular. To come back to staffing and people, so if you can't change the people, change the people. So how do you go about with that? Because obviously everybody in an organization's mindset is very different based on our own values and our experiences, and then we've got our own culture that you're trying to create in an organization, but ultimately you are very reliant on your staff. So how do you go about changing that mindset so excellence does become part of somebody's daily vernacular?
Great point there, Lark, and I'll answer it really quickly. I work with a company in the Midlands, and the CEO said to me one day, Kev, I've got 2 anchors in my business. They're holding us back globally, and they needed to change their processes because they were working in manufacturing, and their suppliers were not supplying quality ingredients, components to what they were making. So it was really down to what the CEO said, the 2 anchors. And I said, well, there's 2 choices, honestly. When it comes down to winning people over, it's getting them to engage. And if they can't engage with all the help and support, well, there's only one other way. And we don't really want, it's last resort, isn't it? But that's the door, but we don't really want to get there. But to win the people over, it's actually having you said about Lark, the culture. And I know you've embraced excellence so well, but it's the culture that matters, because we win people over to that culture, and all of a sudden our values become true to them. And you have a charter for excellence, which is a really good way every day. I've got it on my desk, on my PC desktop, because I'm paperless every day. But what we've got then is charter for excellence, and we've said about the principles and the framework coming through. The principles of excellence, there are 11, and they include owner responsible. And that means everybody is trusted to own and be responsible for their own results. And once we get the head, heart, and hands to that approach, we never lose anybody. In fact, we actually approach and attract more.
What do you find the problem is when, and this is potentially a bit of devil's advocate, but also my experience across housing, I guess, when those problems are potentially at more of an exec level, or with you know, leaders in the business who you've got, I don't know, your mid managers, senior managers, whoever it might be, saying, look, we're not delivering for tenants. we're trying to do X, Y, Z. And I speak this quite openly as a number of people who've been on these roundtables, the last 100 or so roundtables. I can almost quote probably about 50, 60 people who said this, which is that we're trying to make change. We're trying to have impact. We can see the difference it's having, but I'm not being listened to. Or we've got ideas, and one of the most frustrating things I find in the sector, and it's the biggest way the sector wastes money, in my opinion, is that people keep having ideas and get nowhere until they leave, and then they're recruited as consultants saying exactly the same thing, and suddenly those narratives are being taken through. Now, excellence is an interesting conversation to me. It's why I wanted to bring you in, and why when you offered to do today, I was absolutely, it was a very, very easy decision, because we have excellence in our business, and I'm sure you see this regularly, Kevin and Lark and other leaders in the business, other leaders on the round table today. And yet sometimes their voices aren't heard until they've left, or the amount of people I know who go through training and go, well, I know we've said this to our managers already, but nothing happens. So how do you work through those processes? Because it's another part of culture, but it's also, I think, a reason why people are leaving the sector, but also leaving the businesses they're with in the first place.
It's a great point, because I was with the Institute of Productivity in Manchester a few months ago. We had the head of Microsoft software development in the UK speaking, and she said about their approach, and it has to change. Their approach is developing new software by not sorting out the bugs and fixes at the outset, the creation or the launch, but giving it to the clients. And it's not always coming back with the right results. So let's apply that lesson learned and identified from them. It's an expensive one for Microsoft, but they can bear it. We can't in housing, because every penny counts. So we're looking now at excellence in housing, which you've got as a free document to have, and it answers some of these questions. Coming back to what's the exec role, or strategic oversight. Let our senior leaders set the line of sight, their intents. Let the board, or whoever it might be who looks after our compliance, governance and regulation, look at how are we doing strategically. This is what we hope to do, and this is how we're doing it, and how well are we doing it. And then we can say to our people, we really want to engage with you. We want to listen, give them the chance, the forums, the huddles, the channels, whatever it might be. Use an app. We use a great one ourselves, and listen to the stories. I find the quietest people can sometimes have the best ideas, but it's giving them the voice, and we have the ear. So you've got to I'll shut up.
No. And this is it. And it's the amount of people I know, and this is in no way, I mean, it's supposed slightly related, which is they've been on this roundtable who've never done any public speaking. And then they've done these as a co-host with myself, and gone on and delivered at conferences and been brilliant. And that we had a roundtable a few weeks ago with the chief exec of Wish, talking about women's voice in particular, and sometimes they're getting drowned out and not heard. And that was fascinating to hear, because it's exactly that. It's a willingness to listen, and not realizing that it's always the loudest voice who is necessarily got the right answers. But sometimes when it comes to leadership, that can be the way that it's directed. So it's great to hear that as part of the course, that's covered. Gabby has put in the chat there that she absolutely agrees with Lark. Proper qualitative insights are crucial to understanding what is going on in an organization, as it's important to know what employees know is wrong, but don't feel they can or might not know how to pinpoint and share. And she's backed that up by saying exit interviews are often too late to learn about what is wrong. And I mean, from a recruitment side, I'd say that's been my main business now for 12 years. Couldn't agree more with that. And I imagine this is something that you try to get to the crux of with your clients, Kevin, particularly in housing, which is that we lose tenants. Sorry, we lose fantastic staff because we weren't listening at the right time.
And if I can add, I was just typing it out, but I might as well just say it.
Yeah.
I know of a friend who recently left an organization, and the thing is, people talk. So a colleague left a year ago because of reasons. She knows that she is divulged in that exit interview about why she left, set out the entire thing, inviting as well. And so we know what she said when she left, what was making her leave. And we also know that nothing happened. So when my friend got to leaving, she didn't even bother with the exit interview and divulging the reasons why she left, because she would know that if she would take the effort and calmly and constructively outline why she'd leave, she know that nothing would change anyway. So it is always those things. You're too late, especially if you don't do anything.
Couldn't agree more. Kevin, any thoughts on that before I bring Lark in?
Yep, my background is in strategic human resource management, combining management and development, and it really is important that, you know, in terms of Lean Six Sigma, we operate to the voice of people, voice of customers, voice of employees. We shouldn't have to rely upon these techniques, and in HR, we shouldn't need a whistleblower policy. We should, part of our people strategy is to give our people the voice and the ear, and be willing to listen and to respond, because the worst thing is to get the business cycle wrong. So where we've reduced the business cycle, and from the case study, we've reduced it a lot. The NHS are on a business cycle of 2 years at best. If we can get it down, so one of the big four we work with wanted a new performance management system that gives them this 6 weeks window. But within that 6 week window, they wanted to develop the opportunity to listen more, to speak less, and this comes in with the role of senior leaders and execs, to give the space and the time to listen, to engage. I went into one of the HQs of this particular company in London, right by the River Thames. I spoke with the people on reception, and they said to me, do you know what? Our senior leaders here, our people, our bosses never do that. Oh, there you go. Yeah. It works.
That narrative that must change. And actually, Michelle's mentioned in the chat, to back up Gabby's point, that, you know, that's if exit interviews even get carried out. It's very easy to bury your head in the sand and see the issue with the person exiting, rather than those that retain their positions. And I'm not just personally, but the amount of people I know who have been in businesses and someone was great and they've left and everyone was sad that they've left, but as soon as they've left, suddenly their name is mud. And it's wild that we go, well, they just weren't good enough. That one that they were, we probably weren't good enough. Lark, I'm going to bring you in.
Thank you, Matt. I would like to say I'd love to hear from anybody else who experiences the same issues. I think that we all probably do in our sector, but for me, in terms of decision making, it's a really key thing that I think that needs to be looked at in our organisations, and how decisions are made, because we're trying to break away from being that really sort of 1970s local authority mindset of housing, and it's really, really difficult to do. There's lots of legacy issues in the organisation. You try and move forward, but it's about being dynamic, about doing things different. And actually, if somebody wants to make a decision to do something different, they should be able to do it. If it fails, it fails. We all learn from it. But I think to have this massive sort of convoluted chain of command to get decisions made, to make changes that actually you should be trusting your managers to be able to do anyway, is a massive, massive no-no in an organisation, because it is never, ever going to excite anybody, and nobody's ever going to take ownership. People can't make those decisions to affect change. They're not going to buy into it. You've got to be able to do that. So I think decision-making within organisations is key. Yes, budget and financial constraints and all the rest of it, but there does have to be that element there. Otherwise, we're never going to break away from this mindset that we are in this kind of local authority type sector. So apologies to anybody who is in a local authority. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we're trying to break away from that. So it is really key. I love that term, Michelle's term of accidental manager. I know exactly what she means by that. But I think if you're not dynamic enough, if you're in a leadership position and you're fortunate to be that position, you're never ever going to be able to have frank conversations. We're all adults that come to work every day. We should be able to have adult conversations. So that's just my thoughts. But it'd be lovely to hear from other people, because I'm sure I'm not the only one.
You aren't. I mean, the chat is definitely agreeing with you.
It's gone live on us, hasn't it?
It absolutely has. And what's really interesting, actually, is I spoke to a colleague of mine, not a colleague, sorry, a director of housing who I know well. I spoke to them the other day, and they were having some psychologically informed training at the moment, which is obviously being able to talk more openly and the rest of it. And actually, they've tried to embrace it, but what has caused is conflict, because some managers are so, oh, you can't say that, you can't say that. And it's like, well, if we don't have these conversations, we can't move forwards. And suddenly it's creating conflict and making, you know, people I know want to leave, because they're going, well, what's the point? Because I'm trying to help us change you in a way we need to. And you can see from the chat there that, you know, on one side, it's brilliant. Kim Sutton has said, last year I completed a master's in leadership, management, housing and homelessness. This was partly funded by my employer and by London Housing Federation, and gave me a great insight into many of the cultures and leadership qualities that are required and helped with my training for teams. So obviously on one side, brilliant investment in what's going on. And then Gabby's pointed out that phrase of because we've always done it that way. Yes. Michael said, you know, satisfy suboptimal low horizons. Gabby, support and build capabilities of reluctant accidental managers, as they are clearly the people who make the right connections and instill trust and confidence. And Kate's backed you up there, Lark, by saying we are hampered by legacy managers and boards. Being creative and taking a more balanced risk attitude is key to the movement. Michael's also mentioned about qualifications. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but Lark, I'll bring you back in on those points.
Sorry, and I don't mean to
No, not at all. It's
sorry,
lovely to hear
sorry.
from you. Sometimes
It's
people love diving in, some people can only chat. So it's not a problem at all.
No, I think it's just because the legacy issue, and there's many things that we are still dealing with and it's challenging, but it's also to bring back the point about the consultants that are in the sector. So one of the things I made an absolute conscious decision to do was to not choose the people that are being used. It tends to be a very small pool of people within the sector that everyone tends to pull upon. So then everything becomes very samey. So I specifically did not go down that route and have chosen different consultants. Our governance consultants, for example, completely done it differently. And it brings a complete fresh set of eyes in, and then actually you start doing things differently naturally because the person is not ingrained in that sector mindset. There's no legacy there. And so we're just by no mistake that we're the first organisation in Scotland to go down the Investors in Excellence route, and it's not going to be easy by any means. But again, it's just to demonstrate, I think, unless you actually are willing to make changes, it has to come from the top. You have to be committed to doing it, and you do need to be able to have frank conversations. If somebody's offended, then maybe you should question, are you a good fit? Does your values fit with our organisation? These are tough questions, but otherwise you will remain stagnant and you will have anchors, and anchors will just drag you down constantly. You can't have anchors.
No. And just to add to what you've been saying, you know, Michelle, Gabby and others, and Lark's absolutely spot on there, to say that from experience, and if you take everybody who's worked in 28 years of business, their corporate knowledge in IIE Group is important. What they're saying, though, is that, yes, we engage our people. It's where we engage them at. Always the lowest level, because you don't want to wait for somebody to jump up and bite you, or you have to react. So let's act, be proactive. And what you have just said, Lark, is so important. You mentioned earlier about if we look at a value, so the case study, what have they really upped their game on? Trust. So it's a core value and it's a quality value. What are we doing about trust? We trust everybody, but particularly our people. They've changed and flip-flopped from 3 years ago, more focused, and doesn't mean we're not focused now on the other part. They've gone from being organization, customer, client, tenant, to being people, organization, tenant more. And it's trusting owner responsible, because as Lark said, when you look for trusting your people more and engaging them more, empowering them, exciting them, because that's what the case study core values are, the acronym is excite, you get decision making. At the same time, you get problem solving.
You absolutely do. And it's a lovely, lovely point to end on. I'd seen a point in the chat there was, is it the permission from the top needed? Hashtag I want to work for Lark. So like you've got some fans from today's session. And,
well done.
and Liz has said that phrase, we've never done it like that, resonates with me. They were expecting performance to improve, but didn't want change. It's very problematic when you see the issues and identify solutions. And Kevin, obviously that's what IIE are trying to achieve and trying to make change in the housing sector. So I implore anyone looking for discussions around excellence to reach out to Kevin and the team. Thank you to everyone who could join us today. Thank you to everyone who could enter everything into the chat. I appreciate the chat box today has been more busy than people diving in. Sometimes it's the other way around. So it's been great to get the input from absolutely everybody. I've got a new big fan in Lark, which is fantastic. So I think more people want Lark back on the future roundtables. That's amazing. And Kevin, just a big thank you to you and to IIE for stepping in last minute.
Pleasure.
What's the
Thank
best
you all.
way for people to get in touch with you moving forward if they do want to get any further information?
Get hold of us, IIE, at investorsinexcellence.com. We answer extremely quickly. Kevin.hart@investorsinexcellence.com. And what we'll do is, as we've said before, no strings attached. The free Excellence in Housing guide is available. We don't force anything on anybody. If you'd like it, get hold of Matt or get hold of us and you've got it. Win-win.
Absolutely wonderful. I know a few points in the chat today were actually regarding health and housing. So the first, just in terms of next week's roundtable, Walsall Housing Group are sponsoring a series this year, which they're partnering with NHS consultants and things as well, around health and housing and the built environment and that side of things. It's our first session. It's next Tuesday. It's actually an hour-and-a-half session, and the title is going to be Building Health in Our Homes, and we're going to be looking at respiratory issues and other things to do with damp and mold, along with partnering with health providers. So if you'd like to get involved, please just let me know, and this link will work next Tuesday for you at 11 as well. Hazel, I will definitely get you the guide sent over. Kevin, thank you to yourselves and IIE, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Thanks very much. Take care and all the best.
Cheers. Take care.